it was that click I desired. It was like there was something wrong. The information was there for me to go find it. And then once I found the information, I was able to get the dopamine reward. When I hit a level of a comfort, like it's like, I know this job in and out. There's no surprises anymore. That's when it's like, that's the signal to me. It's time to look for something else. I never got comfortable, right? I never found something that was like, you know what, this is it. Like, this is the aspect of IT that I'm going to lean on and I'm going to make my entire career about it. Because one, there was always new tech. So I'm a curious person who are either embracing AI and it's making your day easier, or you're getting smoked by people that are using AI in your field and you're not. Gen AI is coming to take away the less interesting bits and going to allow you to free yourself up to do things that you didn't even think you had the capability of doing before.
All right, everyone. I'm here with my buddy, Joseph Morais. And I got to say, I'm really excited to have this conversation today. I think we've got a nice little balance between, what's going on with humanity, technology, and somebody who has been walking the walk and talking the talk on it. So, Joseph, once again, really excited to have you on today. And I want to start it off.
Excited to be here.
And I want to start it off by asking you, what got you interested in the intersection of humanity and technology?
Such a great question. And I think I have a pretty good answer. So I've always been a gamer at heart. My mom sat me in front of an NES, the original Nintendo that used to play, Super Mario Brothers and Kid Icarus and all of those games when I was like 5-ish years old. I've always had my brother-in-law, Joe, another Joe, in my life. He's been an Oracle DBA since as far as I can remember. And he gifted me my first computer when I was 8 years old. And then I upgraded it when I was 10. I put in a better processor, bigger hard drive. And I remember at 11 years old, I turned 11. My uncle gave me a game called Bloodnet by Microprose.
Okay.
It was a PC game about cyberpunk meets vampires. It's awesome, right? But I couldn't boot it. I didn't have enough like RAM to start the game. So that's what led me down this journey of reading an MS-DOS manual and reconfiguring my autoexc.bat to not load certain programs ahead of time. So I had enough TSR memory in order to boot the game, right? And it was that moment that I fixed it. I was more excited, Don, about getting that game to boot than I think I was about actually playing the game, at least for the first few days. Then I became in love with the game, and it's one of my favorites of all time. But it was that click I desired. It was like there was something wrong. The information was there for me to go find it. And then once I found the information, I was able to get the dopamine reward. And it was finding that click is what kind of got my brain tuned as I got older. I was like, where could I find more moments like that? And then, I was born in 1980. So, the 90s was an interesting time for IT, right? The internet was just happening, right? It was very hard to get to. Most people I know, I was getting access to the internet, dialing up through bulletin boards and using Gopher and the old school protocols that no one knows about anymore. And right, bringing back memories, but I got obsessed with bulletin boards. And I think that was like, how do I learn more about this? How do multiple people dial into a bulletin board and interact with each other? So the network layer really got me fascinated. So when I graduated when I got to school in 98, it was a no brainer for me to take information systems and technology. I was like, this is the degree that most aligns with where I think I can find more of those clicking moments, more of those light bulbs popping off. And that led me into like my first roles, which was, very bottom up. I started with desktop support. So, helping deploy desktops across a refinery at Sunoco in Southwest Philadelphia for 6 months as a part of a co-op going to Drexel. And then eventually evolving and getting a job out of school that was more server oriented, right? So you started with the desktops. Now you're working with the servers in the background and things like VMware are becoming prominent. This is the mid 2000s. I saw an opportunity, got very interested in CLI, got very fascinated with network engineering and networking devices, and I made a pivot to that. And as I'm telling you the story, you'll notice there's a lot of pivots. And the reason I had a lot of pivots, Don, is I never got comfortable, right? I never found something that was like, you know what, this is it. Like, this is the aspect of IT that I'm going to lean on and I'm going to make my entire career about it. Because one, there was always new tech. So I'm a curious person, right? And once you figure out a technical domain, those light bulbs don't go off as often, right? They've already gone off and you know what to do. So it's always trying to figure out what's the next thing I want to do, or what's the next challenge, or what's the next thing that's going to make that light bulb go off. meant me going into different technical domains. And there was times when I had really strong backgrounds at places. I worked at Urban Outfitters for 4 years, and I had been, I had a title of like solutions engineer, right? Which was completely nebulous, right? It meant you're a generalist and we're gonna throw you wherever we can. So I started with network engineering. Then our guy who ran our SANs, which was not insignificant, we had like 8 different arrays, hundreds of disks. He left and he's like, well, Joseph, you're now the SAN administrator too. So you figure the network piece out. Here are all these. I'm gonna do a 2-day training session with you, and now you're the SAN administrator. So I got to do that. Got a whole bunch of those clicks. That was great. But then I heard about this thing called containerization and Docker. And our team at the time was called the e-commerce ops team, which most people would think of as like a DevOps team. So I decided, this is interesting. I'm going to explore that, and I'm going to pivot. And now I'm going to be the new guy on a team, but I'm going to learn this, and I want to get more of those aha moments. And I did. But the whole time there was this underpinning of, hey, I'm personable, right? Like I smile. Can tell anecdotes. I can describe technology in a very lay way. But that wasn't very beneficial to those roles, whether it was SAN administrator, network administrator, DevOps. People just wanted me to make sure that I could deploy the thing, support the thing, scale the thing, fix the thing. And I was so curious, like, is there a role out there that can take this personality and have conversations with people like you? And can I find a way to intersect that with technology? So that ultimately led me to, I worked for a startup called Amino Payments that never really took off, but it was greenfield with AWS. So I got a ton of cloud experience. And then AWS rang the phone one day and said, hey, do you want to come be a technical account manager for us? And I'd wanted to do that. It was my first client facing role. It was support. So it's strong in my background. But then I realized, like, as much as I liked it, it was post implementation. Somebody helped them build something, and now I'm going to help support it, which is good, but I wanted to be the one helping to build it. So I started looking around for solution architecture jobs at AWS, and this was like June of 2020. So we were right in the middle of the pandemic, and I actually ended up having a bunch of different job offers. One from Google, Pivot at AWS, another startup in Philly called Sports Trade. I ended up that didn't work out, and then Confluent. And Confluent checked a lot of boxes for me, Don. So it would use data streaming. So Kafka at the startup I talked about, that was our stack. It was Kafka and Samza. Kafka was our storage layer. Samza was our stream processing layer. It was AWS because they want to be the AWS partner solutions engineer. So I just spent a year there. I spent multiple years working in it. And they wanted me to use my personality to talk about this technology. And that's finally when I had maybe the biggest click in my entire career. And I realized, wow, this is the type of role that I've always been dying for. I can explain the tech, I get to use the tech, but I get to have conversations about it. I get people excited about technology. And I realized that's really my superpower. And that ultimately led me to being this new role that I'm in as tech champion at Confluent that I started in July of last year. And now now I have the best job in the world, right? I used to be the plumber, and now I help evangelize the wrenches. And I think that is the best place for me. Like with all of my skills, I realize this is exactly what I should be.
And I think that this is kind of like leaning in on the whole idea of like you're finding those little spaces that are lighting you up and always kind of like walking towards that, the uncomfortable nature of something new, but at the same time recognizing like that's where your growth happens, that's where you exist. It would
Right?
be
And that's where the industry is going too.
oh, 100% because like if we're looking at I mean, we could definitely jump into like what vibe coding is or what's happening with Gen AI and whether you like it or not. There's this general sentiment of like using technology to help you solve problems that you may not have been solving before. I advise, you know, I advise a nonprofit company and it's run by like a retired Coke guy who mentors college students and like Setfire is an amazing company and what they're doing is awesome. But like, there's a relatively non-technical guy who's sitting down coding a number of things today. And it's fascinating to see like how that opportunity is opening up to people that it was not traditionally there for, or would have required so many more hours for them to get those aha moments, that kind of like light clicking, seeing something moving forward. And the other aspect of this is it reminds me of the Steve Jobs commencement speech. where he talks about, you never know where the dots are connecting until the end. And so, like, to follow that bit of joy that you were experiencing each moment of like, "Hey, I wanna learn this," or "I'm gonna, like, step in, I'm gonna see, like, how I can grow in that." That's, like, an amazing kind of concept that I think we're gonna have to come back to for everyone. Um, and going like, well, because let's say AI is going to it's disrupting, right? Like, and it's gonna be disruptive. But what I would like to focus on is, like, how did you know that you were, in need of that next pivot? What were the qualities that said, "Hey, it's time to either move, it's time to go," or how did you know what you wanted to, like, move toward?
Good questions. So I think in terms of when it was time to start looking, it's when I hit a level of like comfort. Like it's like I know this job in and out. There's no surprises anymore. That's when it's like, that's the signal to me, it's time to look for something else. Now, what to look for or how to know what to find the right signals for what was new, that would generally come down to two things. Like, what is trending in our industry? Because ever since I graduated, ever since I was born, technology has been growing at a rapid pace, right? It went from no one having desktops to every other household having desktops to people having multiple devices that have IP addresses to now having cellular devices that are orders of magnitude more powerful than anything I ever used as a kid,
Yeah.
right? From a technology standpoint. So it was what's trending, but what is picking my interest, right? What is piquing my interest and what will make me feel uncomfortable again, right? So it started with desktop. And I think the next, for at least the way it used to be, I don't know, things are a little different now because everything's in your browser. We used to actually install things on desktops. I don't think people remember that. Right? Like now you have Chrome or like Safari, and that's your entire like business suite. You don't really need anything else. It's really just a browser. Like how many tabs you have open is more of a measure of how many apps you have than the actual like going to your start apps, right? And then server made was a natural progression. Networking was interesting to me because it was so fascinating how the world was starting to be connected. The fact that I could interact with somebody on the other side of the world in near real time. Now, of course, video chat was pretty nascent, right? It was still it wasn't that great, right? But it worked. And it was a fascinating experiment, especially with voice over IP, early 2000s, the fact that I could talk to someone and completely circumvent what used to be the minutes and the cost of like long distance carriers. And now I can connect right to someone's IP on Skype and I can talk to them. So the how that worked fascinated me, right? And that was kind of like the rise of the internet. I want to understand what actually makes all that work. Well, it's DNS, it's packets, it's cables. Somewhere something is plugged into something. Especially then, wireless wasn't quite as ubiquitous as it is now. Pun, I guess, intended with the company Ubiquity. But so it was like, what's the new shiny thing? And the one that was most obvious to me was containerization when I was at Urban Outfitters. I saw there and I remember installing VMware on a Windows server and virtualizing something. This wasn't even ESXi. This is VMware server before all that. And somebody challenging me saying that there's no way this software, I think it was Tibco or something like that, is going to run it as a VM. I was like, I don't know. I think it'll run. And we got it to run and we started bin packing and we dropped like 2 or 3 server racks from the data center for virtualization. And I saw that and what that did to the industry, and I thought containers are going to do something very similar. I was like, this is going to make things deployment so much easier. Now I don't have to worry about environment variables. I can finally start treating these things like cattle instead of pets. I forced myself to be uncomfortable and go be a new person. Had very little experience with Linux, had zero experience with CI/CD, none of that. I had to learn all that from scratch. And the first day was learn Git. Like that was my first day. After being like the most senior or second most senior network engineer across this company, is like, I'm okay with being the new guy again because I think this is going to give me those aha moments. And clearly it was the trend. It was something that the industry was going in. So I knew I wouldn't waste my time. So kind of just to reiterate, it was like, what's kind of trending and what's going to give me those moments of clarity that I need to get my dopamine rush.
So, like, when you get those moments of clarity, I'm kind of digging into this, like, the human experience side of, like, when you feel this, because I have this general idea that we're all gonna need to be pivoting a lot more.
I
Um,
think you're right.
and, probably for the better, right? Like, because a lot of us are just dissatisfied with our jobs, right? Like, and is that because of the job? Is that because of who we are as a person? And there's probably 18 different reasons that we can come up with, but, like, for somebody who has, leaned into that uncomfortable nature of like, "Hey, I'm gonna be learning something new. I'm gonna be applying myself. I'm gonna be growing through these experiences." I think we've got a great opportunity to talk about, like, how do you've identified, like, how do you get there, right? Like, how do you know that you're gonna be making a change? And then how do you make the decisions to go in the directions that you do and follow that path of like, am I gonna be learning? Is it gonna be challenging? And then additionally, like, when do you jump on the trend? Um, that is a curious question as well. Because do you feel like you were early on the Dockerization side of it just by how you're talking about where you were at with VMware? Um, how do you
I
know?
I
Yeah.
think it'll be subjective. I think it's subjective, right? In my case, it was kinda two-pronged. One is, am I comfortable enough in my current role that I should be looking, right? Like, has all the curiosity been expired from what I'm currently doing? And if that's the case, and I think this should be true for most people. And it doesn't necessarily just mean technology, right? Because you'll know when you find the right role. Like and it took me 20 plus years to say this is where I should be. This, like, I could say by de facto, Confluent is the best company I've ever worked for, and the two roles I've had here are my favorite roles I've ever had. But it took 20 plus years of ebbs and flows of uncomfortable to very comfortable and going through those until I found that. So I think you will definitely know when you get to the end what your path in the middle looks like is going to be a bit subjective. Because had I been less comfortable in my role and the containerization, the DevOps, ecom ops thing came up, I might have waited another year. But it was the perfect intersection of I'm too comfortable in what I'm doing and I see this new technology and I happen to have a little insight because of like what you said. I saw the parallels with VMware and I'm like, this is going to be transformative. Like I should be getting in on this. And it wasn't just that because I started to see beyond just the specific technology, I started to see the tooling around it. Things like Jenkins, things like GitHub, believe it or not. I mean, GitHub it's ubiquitous now and everyone knows Git, but at the time that wasn't like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, here's an opportunity for me to kind of figure out and immerse myself in what people are doing now instead of becoming an expert at what people had been doing for the last 20 years. And I think you'll find those inflection points. And if you're outside of technology, they may look very different. But if you're inside of technology, they'll probably look something similar. And I think, generative AI is absolutely another one of those crucial pivots. I mean, it's probably bigger than the internet, right? As big as the internet will be bigger than the internet someday. And your point about us being comfortable with being uncomfortable is extremely important because the curve is like almost like perpendicular to the ground, right? It's insane. The fact that anyone can start coding today by using prompts is insane. Knowing that this is the worst it's ever going to be and it's only going to get better, right? So I think you're ultimately going to end up with two types of people. And this is regardless of what industry is. You're either embracing AI and it's making your day easier, or you're getting smoked by people that are using AI in your field and you're not. And I really think there is really no in between at all.
We're seeing this happen today, right? Like software development jobs and freelancing jobs are down 20% year over year right now, as far as the number of job offers. And I think that's the productivity that we're seeing.
Right.
I'm constantly in the process of hiring people. And so just in this last week, we've really had to actually our next round of hiring, we're significantly changing our process because of the challenges that we've noticed. Like I had a candidate get through 2 rounds of review, not interviews, but to that next round of like face-to-face interview. And then he flat out admitted he didn't have experience with the tool that we were hiring for. And I had to pull up his proposal and look at it and go, your resume and your proposal have it on here that you've been using this tool, that you've solved problems with it. I was like, one of two things is happening. I'm on the phone with the wrong person, or you're just full of it. And like, either way, we can continue forward. And I hope you understand why. But I think that's the downside. That's the nuclear bomb kind of experience when it comes to this, is that it basically allows people to submit any information that they want that sounds and meets the criteria of what you're doing, but it's not truthful. It's not authentic. And that's gonna lead to situations where people are just, mismatched with where they're at. And the challenges that come about from there. But then the other side of this is we give small projects out to people and we say, hey, this is about 4 hours of work. We also know that you're not going to finish it or make it production ready in 4 hours. So do 3 hours of work and 1 hour of basically outlining how you would complete this work. And that's how we want to see how you'd go. This is the first round where I have had somebody complete the entire project in 2 hours.
Because they use that.
They used AI, they showcased that they were an expert in it. They have their own they are familiar enough with the tool that they understand how to create and also have that, like, not 10x, but like 100x. And then on the other side, we had people who spent, 2 hours, but they came up with a project plan and said it was gonna take them 160 hours to do. So like I said, we're not at a point of a 10x developer. We're at 100x.
Think of like the how different like those experiences are, right? And we can't fault the people for using Gen AI. Like it's a tool. It's like you want me to do this calculation, these multiplication tables by hand, even though I have a calculator sitting next to me? It makes no sense. It's like, "Ooh, I have a shovel. I'm gonna dig this up by my hand. No, I'm gonna use the tools that are available to me. And like that's an amazing example. The fact that the first time ever the person finished in 2 hours. And it was, would you say was it production ready, the code? Or was it
Here's what I would do. We have a platform, we have a stack of software that basically we run from like development to staging to Findustries inside of our four walls, kind of like we run the same stack as our customers. And so we deploy, we host for our customers as well. So basically we start at Industries and then we push to our customers after we are comfortable with that code, right? I would push it to my environment. Like, I was that comfortable with it where you have to, and I kept on asking questions. I was like, "Did you pull this off the shelf? Like, was this templated? Like, give me something because I'm still struggling to really truly understand how you did this in 2 hours, and it is of this caliber right now." So,
yeah, that's an incredible endorsement,
yeah,
to be
and
honest,
like
if you
that
think about it.
and that's the kind of, like, work that you look at when you have people that you're looking to bring in because AI is not doing everything today. I don't think it ever will be. I personally see that generative AI isn't going to replace relationships. So the work that you're doing, the evangelization of the technology, like that is staying. Strategy is another place where I don't think AI has the contextual understanding to actually apply itself. And then additionally, creativity. Uh, it may show creative from like, turning a podcast into a blog post, but I don't think it truly kind of extends the reach of where like a human kind of like makes that jump outside of the known.
I agree. I mean, especially with agentic AI, what we're becoming is we're getting these collections of minions, right? And you now become the overlord, right? And you as the overlord can decide, I'm going to be a programming overlord, and I'm going to have these different agents, and I'm going to have the concepts in my mind. And maybe I consult a Gen AI and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, but I have to be the starter. I have to be the kindling because without it, nothing, there's no fire, right? And then I then use my very human brain to make my minions do the pieces I need them to do. I go and look at it holistically, strategically, and now I have this output. And that could be code, but it could also be designing a brand new data center, right? And I need racks. I need like rack diagrams. That's probably people don't even know that those exist, right? There's diagrams that just have like what blades in there, the name of the server, and all of that. I need rack diagrams. I need to, based on these specs, how much KVA do I need? How much power do I need? How much cooling do I need? And I could use all of that to build a data center plan. Or I could be like myself, someone who's in technical marketing, and I could use my minions to come up with a strategic plan that's going to have this reach these specific personas. And I think this is the ubiquity of this tool set is it's not going to be refined. It's not going to be limited to just some niche pocket of data scientists. No, if you're a lawyer, you should be using this. If you're a doctor, you should be using this. And again, this makes me laugh because I know that this is the most infantile and worst. As bad as it's ever going to be. It's only going to get more intelligent, more accessible, and more integrated. Not on like a yearly basis, on like a monthly basis.
Oh, I mean, we're seeing it day after day, right? Like I have had to turn off news feeds just because it's like, we have to get the news some time to settle. How have you seen like Gen AI come into like your work and change how you are operating on a daily basis, a weekly basis?
So it's two faceted. One is the tooling. So Confluent was pretty early on, and like let's use things like Copilot. Let's have a corporate account to Gemini, or let's have a gated Chat GPT instance so that all the information stays within our residency or whatever the construct they have. So I'm using it to ideate, to take like musings and turn them into full blown like jokes or ideas for content, to help brainstorm. And then that's one side of it. That's like the user experience at Confluent. And whether there's people who are in engineering, they're using it, like I said, assisted IDs, things like that. People across marketing, across product for similar things like ideation. But then there's the implementation into our services. So we have a managed Flink service, inside of Confluent Cloud, and we have built-in ML and AI inference. So you could preset up a model and then send event data and then get a response back through a prompt, but also how we position our technology, right? So I work for Confluent, the company behind Apache Kafka and now Flink, and we're very big in the world of Iceberg as well. So analytics is there as well. And, really with agentic AI, it adds fuel to a problem that people already had. And you already talked about it. It's data accessibility. I'm an enterprise, right? I'm not digital native. I've been around for 50 years. I have databases everywhere. I have different cloud providers because I've acquired companies over years. I have things everywhere. I want to build something that's useful with Gen AI. Well, how do I get all that data to that? Well, data streaming helps with that, right? How do I make sure that it's real time? Data streaming helps with that. And then also for agentic AI, how do I manage the workflow? Between like right now, agentic AI, they use HTTP endpoints and they send one request from one agent to another, but that's not really how things are consumed. A lot of times, some event produced by one agent one will need to be consumed multiple times. Maybe it's consumed by a human, maybe it's consumed by agent B and agent C. So something like data streaming where it can post to a topic and then multiple consumers can consume it whenever they need to really fits. So it's exciting for me because I got here, almost 5 years ago before Gen AI was lit up like the way it is today. And we were trying to help people with just these general challenges. Like, how do you get all of your data into a single substrate? How do you make your data real time? How do you integrate mainframes? Gen AI is just another reason to do all of those things, but it's a reason that now your CEO understands. Your non-technical business stakeholders understand we should be doing this. And now you're telling them you can't do this because you don't have your data in one place. It just makes my job easier, frankly. So it's a new data problem, but I think it's such an emergent and such an obvious data problem that it's finally going to force industries into saying, yes, we need to figure out how to wrangle our data, make it high quality, and make it available everywhere, including our Gen AI agents. And it's interesting. So I have a podcast as well. It's called Life is But a Stream. And we had Stefan Hollinger, CEO of a company called Airy, and they're working around agentic AI, orchestration, scaffolding, all of that. And he said something to me that kind of blew my mind. I think you'll appreciate this time. He said, we have to figure out how we treat our human workforce versus our AI workforce. And they're different. And I was like, you know what? That's crazy because it's true. Like people are building like Slack like interfaces where you could be in a room full of agents and you could pose a question. And now all these different agents have their own opinion and they're collaborating with each other. And this idea of AI workforce versus human workforce was just absolutely mind blowing to me. The fact that we're already in 2025 and you have to think that way.
You know what's funny is I'm actually talking to clients about a very similar challenge, right? Like if you look at Gemini, you look at Copilot, those are basically how I would say consultants. They're experts outside of your four walls. They may have context to bits of your information. Salesforce's Watson has is it Watson? No, I can't remember what Salesforce's is.
But yeah, it's not
It's not
Watson,
long.
but that's IBM.
Either way, but Salesforce has their own. And it's going to be very specific to what's going on there. AI isn't going to be a technology initiative. It's going to be more of a human resources initiative
Exactly.
because it
Yeah.
is, you're right. It is. How do you treat your AI workforce versus your human workforce? And how do you collaborate between them? And
Right.
what's funny is like, we're going to get into rooms and you may not know the difference.
It's true. And something you touched on is how do I shift work away from my human workforce? So what can I take away from them? Not that I want to reduce their numbers. I want them to work on higher level things. I want them to be thinking about the holistic architecture. I want them to be thinking about strategy. I want to take away the undifferentiated heavy lifting that my Gen AI workforce can now handle and probably do a better job at. And then let's focus the humans on the things that they can only do. Like you said, creativity, strategy, look into things holistically. I don't think that's going to be replaced anytime soon. So if anything, it's not, hey, they're coming for our jobs. They're coming to take the Gen AI is coming to take away the less interesting bits and going to allow you to free yourself up to do things that you didn't even think you had the capability.
And I think that's the fascinating part about this is like, if you look at culturally how we are, work is very important to all of us, not just from the standpoint of like keeping society going, but like we get value from it. There's an intrinsic value to being able to create and give our talents to the community. And so like if AI can help us to spend more time giving our talents, fantastic, and less time with the drudge of what we don't like. And the amazing thing is there's parts of the job that you may love that I kind of hate if we were doing the same thing, and then, vice versa. But, like, AI can be that collaborative partner in the solutions, especially as
Right, that meets us in the middle, allows you to do what you love, allows me to do what I love, and we end up ultimately working 10x than we could before, and we're even happier.
exactly.
To me, that's the promise of AI, or at least the
So
hope.
and I've absolutely this has been such a fascinating conversation, and I gotta wrap it up, but, like, coming to this place of joy with what we're doing, I feel like you've constantly been making the choices of like, "Hey, I feel like I'm not growing as much, let me make a change, let me go." What advice do you have to both the next generation and to people who are sitting in the environment right now going, "What's up?"
Well, let's start with the future, right? The future generation. Don't be afraid to try something new or something radically different than you've been doing, right? I think it's important, especially in technology, to immerse yourself in various domains. You may not realize it, but you love ops, or you may hate ops, and you may love development, or you may find yourself like kind of going off sideways and be like, you know what? There's this thing called technical marketing. I can't believe I can talk about these things. I can immerse myself in the product and then figure out the right way to message it. And there are jobs like that. And I think without exploring how much is out there, whether it's product, engineering, the field, kind of know that there's a whole world outside of IT that's not just the help desk guy that tells you to get out of the way and starts typing on the keyboards real fast and fixes your problem. There's a much bigger ecosystem of technology. And for those who are already in the industry, and they're not, and they're kind of looking, and they're not quite, they're not in love with what they do. I think you should, one, your goal point should be to fall in love with what you do, right? It makes life much, much more
More
enjoyable,
enjoyable.
much more enjoyable. But don't be afraid to be the new man, the new guy on a new team. If it exposes a new set of skills that you can then leverage throughout your career and maybe exposes you to things that you might love. It might end up being a bad year and you'll be like, Joseph, I wish I never did that. But you'll learn something from it and your next pivot will be better. I guarantee it. Ultimately, until you make that pivot where you're like, this is where I always should be. I always should have been. That's the moment I have, and I want that for everyone else. And I think you have to, really say to yourself, can I learn something new? And the answer is yes. Whatever you're doing today, you're doing, you're great at it. And you got great at it. You didn't start great at it. It took time. And you could be great at something else. And that collection of skills will ultimately lead you to the thing that you love. I promise you.
Joseph, absolutely fascinating. I greatly appreciate you being on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Don. This is absolutely a pleasure and a thrill. So I appreciate getting to know you even better and you having given me some time.
Awesome, my friend.